Hey everybody, welcome back. So a while back, you might remember, I did a test and review of the Simder Cut 50 plasma cutter. And while I found that it worked really well on 220 to 240 volts, I was really struggling with it on 110, 120 volts because it would pop my 20 amp breaker, even with the power, even with the cutting power turned down as low as I could get it to go and still produce an arc. I couldn't run it for more than 3 to 5 seconds before it popped the 20 amp breaker. Well, Simder reached out to me here a couple weeks ago, and they said that they talked to their electrical engineer, and their electrical engineer said, all I have to do to make it work right is to take my 20 amp breaker out and put a 30 amp breaker in, and would I be willing to update the video or make a new video showing that? So I have to admit my initial knee-jerk reaction to that request was to say no, because it really, in my opinion, and I'm not an electrical engineer, don't chew me out for this, my initial thought was that's really not safe to put a 30 amp breaker in place of a 20 without upgrading the wiring in the outlet as well. Now my 110 volt outlet here, this is a genuine industrial quality 20 amp outlet, and I have 12 gauge solid copper wire in a fairly short run. This should easily handle 25 amps. In the US here, we have the idea that if you take 20% off the top as a safety factor. So if this can handle 25 amps, and it can, we call it a 20 amp, and that gives us a bit of a safety factor. Personally, if everything is good condition, I think the safety factor is a bit higher than that. So after thinking about it for a little bit, I thought, sure, I'll go ahead and I'll run that test as long as I can make a disclaimer saying, and of course they have no control over what I say or do, but as long as I'll make a disclaimer saying, hey, don't do this. Don't just take a 20 amp breaker out and put a 30 amp breaker in without making sure everything else in that circuit is up to the task of handling that, or you'll start a fire. You know what? So with that being said, let's swap the breaker and let's give it a go. Okay, there we go. 20 amp breaker out, 30 amp breaker in, garage west wall. That's where I weld at, and the power's back on. Okay, I've got the machine set at 20. The air pressure is set at 60. Back here, it's probably actually running 55 with the trigger pulled. I'm gonna unplug the compressor so it can't start up. Now, be aware that I am going to be cutting with one hand and holding the camera in the other, so don't expect any kind of amazing cuts going on here. Okay, I tried to make that take about 10 seconds. It did fine. It would have popped the breaker in 3 or 4 seconds on 20. I'm gonna let things cool down a little bit, and I am gonna turn this up. Oops, that's the air. I am gonna turn this up to 40. Okay, I've given everything 10 minutes or so to cool down. I have checked for fires. I'm not even seeing anything or feeling anything even slightly warm. Yeah, everything's stone cold. So I checked my breaker box. Everything looks good. So let's try this on 40 amps. Let's try the same thing. I got a thicker piece of material here, but you want to know what? Considering the fact that I'm doing this one-handed from a distance back holding the camera, I think I'm just going to stick with the 1/8 inch, but we are on 40 amps. Let's see if we can get 10 seconds out of it. Yeah, I think that was actually more than 10 seconds, probably closer to 12 or 15. I was just counting in my head, You guys can count for me, or I'll go back and count when I watch the video. Okay, so there you have it. The Simder Cut 50 plasma cutter will work fine on a 110 volt 30 amp circuit, and of course it works fine on 220 too, so it isn't an issue on 220. So if you have a 30 amp 110 volt circuit available to you, or you're willing to properly upgrade an existing 15 or 20 amp circuit with the correct gauge of wiring and with the correct outlet, this will be fine for you on 110 or 220. I want to reiterate again, just do not replace a 20 amp breaker with a 30 amp breaker without making sure the rest of it is rated to handle 30 amps. With that being said, I will put a coupon code down below that will get you a healthy chunk off of this. Hopefully get you down in the $150, $160 range. Honestly, I'm not sure how much more than that I would spend for this particular machine. Once you get up in the $200 range, you have a lot of other options open to you, ones that will run properly on a 20 amp circuit. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing improved products from Simder in the near future. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.